Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. Michel de Montaigne begins his very short essay on fear by noting that he is not much of what gets translated as a natural philosopher, a naturalist. That is, he's not somebody who claims to understand or have investigated the psychological or even physical mechanisms, the springs or ressorts in French, of this particular and widespread passion that plays such a big role in our lives, but he's going to provide us in this, just few pages, some really important outlines of what fear looks like and what it does. So we might say he's not giving us the causality of it, but he's giving us a really great phenomenology. And he begins by saying that, it's a strange emotion, and that medical people, medicine, say that none more takes our faculty of judgment away or leads it astray. We do engage in judgment and fear, but our judgments are wrong, both of the situations that we're in, and we'll look at a few examples of that, and of what our response ought to be. So, just for one example that he's going to talk about, soldiers can see a flock of sheep and turn that flock of sheep into a squadron of knights in armor, or reeds or bulrushes into men-at-arms and lancers, our friends into enemies, a white cross into a red one, and then we respond to it. So he's going to talk about, the common people, the vulgaire. They fear things that they think are supernatural, and he gives some pretty interesting examples here of great-grandsires rising out of their graves still wrapped in their shrouds, right? So whatever you want to call them, vampires, zombies, ghouls, or chimeras, werewolves, the loup-garou, right? Or goblins. And he says, we're not worried about that. But even soldiers, people who we would think should be pretty immune to fear, and they're not going to worry about these supernatural, well, they're afraid of the enemy. They're afraid of dying or being maimed. They're afraid of going into battle. They're afraid of, being encumbered under their own stuff that they're carrying. And he talks about some examples of this. During one engagement, a standard bearer who was on guard was seized by such terror that he leapt through a gap in the ruins and rushed out of the town straight for the enemy holding his banner. He thought he was running into the town. At the last minute, he managed to see the troops drawing up their ranks, ready to resist him. And he realized what he was doing and headed back the same way, right? He also talks about another standard bearer who fear had made him so distraught he dashed out of the town, banner and all, through a gun slit, and he was cut to pieces by the attacking soldiers, right? Another person, fear so strongly seized the heart of a certain nobleman, freezing it and strangling it, he dropped down dead in the breach without even being wounded. So fear can do all sorts of things to even soldiers, the people who ought to be showing bravery. And he also talks about fear taking hold of a great crowd. Now here he's still talking about soldiers. He says, in one of the engagements between Germanicus and the Alemanni, two different troops of soldiers took fright, fled opposite ways, one fleeing to the place the other had just fled from. So, we can see this in all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be soldiers. It can be all sorts of people. It can even happen in our own day in virtual communities, online. Or we might think of when Orson Welles broadcast The War of the Worlds without telling anybody that it was a work of fiction. People all over the place thinking Martians had invaded and getting scared about that. Now, what are the effects of fear that he talks about? So he says that fear can make us flee, right? It puts wings on our heels, he says. In other cases, it hobbles us and nails our feet to the ground. And he gives the example of an emperor who is in a battle and he just becomes fixed to the spot, and his second in command has to tell him that if you don't follow me, I'm going to kill you. The loss of your life matters less than the loss of the empire. If you're taken prisoner, get a hold of yourself. And so, we know this response, flight, being fixed in place, freezing, but it can also make us fight. Fear can lead to desperate action. And he says, fear reveals her greatest power when she drives us to perform in her own service those very deeds of valor which she robbed of our duty and our honor. So he gives an example of the Romans fighting against Hannibal, and there's an army of 10,000 foot soldiers that are afraid. Hannibal's a pretty scary guy. The Carthaginians are pretty scary enemies. There's no way for them to get out, so they're like, we need to fight through these guys. And they drive right through them with incredible energy, slaughtering a large number of Carthaginians, paying the same price for a shameful flight, a flight through the enemy, as they should have done for a glorious victory. So, fear can often lead us to acts that appear to be bravery, the opposite of fear, but it's still being motivated by fear. So we have, our three common responses: fight, flight, or being fixed in place, or freezing, as we say these days. He also brings up the fact that fear can drive out other emotions. The one example that he's going to use, of course, is pertaining to sadness. So Pompey and his bunch, the friends of Pompey, are aboard a ship with him. They witness a horrible massacre of his forces. What should that lead to? Feeling grief or sadness. But they're so afraid of the Egyptian sails, they're like, let's get the hell out of town. And it's only when they actually are in a safe place that now they can start feeling not fear, but the sadness that they were going to feel. But fear could drive out anger. Fear could drive out happiness. Fear could drive out envy, all sorts of other possible passions. And it does, in fact, do that. He also tells us that in some cases, people who've tasted real fear can't be brought to look at the enemy. Again, he's thinking about military people, but we might think about people who have gone through very traumatic situations and cannot deal with being in a similar situation. So maybe you're afraid of, centipedes, and you wind up being stuck in a room that you can't escape from, and there are centipedes and they're biting you and crawling on you, and now you can't deal with them until maybe you work through that trauma response, right? Or you are treated very badly by other human beings, and there's certain things that you associate with them, and you can't be in a similar situation without being overcome by that sense of fear. That's another possibility. He also talks about people who are afraid, experiencing interesting physical effects, losing a desire to eat or to drink or to sleep. And he talks about these people in terms of fearing things like poverty or exile or slavery. And he notes that people who are actually in these conditions that are so feared, by these other people, people who are impoverished, right, who lose everything, people who are exiled to another country or banished, people who are brought into slavery, they can actually enjoy life once they are no longer afraid of having to endure that condition because they're already enduring it. But he points out that these sorts of things can get people to do all sorts of remedies on their own part, perhaps even kill themselves. And there are people, this is a bit of a paradox, who are so afraid of dying, of death, that they will bring about their own death. Like he says, people who are unable to withstand the stabbing pains of fear have hanged themselves, drowned themselves, or jumped to their death, showing us that fear is even more unbearable than death itself, right? So that's, pretty strong emotion. Like he says, it's taking our judgment away. And he's going to say a pretty famous line that I think you've heard other people say before. It is fear I am most afraid of. He's not saying there's nothing to fear but fear itself, obviously. But of all the things that we could be afraid of, fear is something that we literally can have for fear itself, right? In French, his French, it's c'est de quoi j'ai le plus de peur que le peur, right? And he's going to finish up the essay by bringing up something a little bit strange. He talks about what is called panic terror. And he says the Greeks brought this up, and they thought that this was attributed to the deities, actually specifically to Pan, the god, this ancient god who could inspire this sort of terror in people. And he does use the word terreur for that. And he says this is another type, an espèce of fear, different from the ones that we're looking at here, where it's from the error of our discourse, the way in which we think about things that we come to fear so much. This actually comes from some sort of divine impulsion without us doing anything in particular about it and without any apparent cause. He says whole peoples have been seized by it as well as whole armies. Such a fear brought wondrous desolation to Carthage. People were shouting, terrified, dashing out of their houses. They began attacking, wounding, and killing each other as if they took each other for enemies to come occupy their city. All was disorder and tumult until they'd calmed the anger of their gods with prayer and sacrifice. So that's a different aspect of fear that can happen that we don't have any control over, right? If that happens, we're kind of screwed. We can do something about these other objects of fear, but we also do have to recognize that fear is quite difficult for us to deal with, and we do have to be, as Montaigne is saying, afraid of the emotion of fear itself.